It's widely believed that Led Zeppelin wouldn't have reached legendary status without Robert Plant's powerful voice and unforgettable stage presence. His distinctive vocal style played a major role in shaping the band's iconic sound, but beyond the spotlight and roaring crowds, Plant's personal journey has included moments of deep, heartbreak challenges that at times may have influenced his career now. At the age of 56, his daughter has chosen to speak publicly about her father's lesser. Known struggles in this video will explore what she shared and what may have inspired her to come forward. Now, Robert's happy childhood. Robert Anthony Plant had a very sweet and happy upbringing, just like every child would wish for. He came into the world on August 20th, 1948, in the industrial town of West Bromwich, Staffordshire, England. His father, Robert C. Plant, was a skilled civil engineer who had served in the Royal Air Force during the Second World War. His mother, Annie Celia Plant, was of Romani heritage. Robert spent his childhood in the Hayley Green area of Halsa and Worcestershire. From a very young age, he developed a deep love for music, especially rock and roll. Even as a little boy, he dreamed of performing like Elvis Presley. For that reason, he would often hide behind the curtains at home during Christmas, pretending to be on stage. Between the curtains and the French windows, he found a unique sound that made him feel like a star. That small space became his imaginary concert hall for a 10-year-old. It was everything he would have ever asked for. But at the same time, he had no idea that this playful habit would later lead him to become one of the greatest voices in rock music. During his teenage years, he attended King Edward VI Grammar School for Boys in Stourbridge. But school wasn't what truly excited him. His heart was drawn to music, especially the blues. He was always happy and excited at the sight of musicians like Willie Dixon and Robert Johnson, whose songs carried raw emotion and deep stories, while other kids focused on their studies. He found himself lost in the sounds coming from his radio. He also had a strong interest in collecting stamps and learning about Romani British history. Despite being a proper grammar school student, he felt a pull toward a different path, one that would lead him into the world of music. So he briefly tried to train as a chartered accountant, but it didn't take long for him to realize it wasn't for him. After just 2 weeks, he left and decided to continue his education at college, hoping to get more qualifications. But deep down, he knew where he truly belonged. At 16, he left home to chase his dreams, but it wasn't as easy as he thought at first to survive. He jumped from one band to another, learning everything he could about blues music and exploring different styles that spoke to his soul. This was his real education, the kind that couldn't be taught in a classroom. As he shaped his musical identity, he drew inspiration from legendary blues artists like Bukka White, Skip James, Jerry Miller, and Sleepy John Estes. But making a living through music wasn't easy to support himself. He took on various jobs. At one point, he worked for a big construction company, laying tarmac on roads in Birmingham. He even had a short stint working at Woolworths in Hale Sowen. But no matter what job he did, his heart remained with music. During this time, he recorded a few songs under CBS Records. Though they didn't gain much attention, he also sang with several bands, one of them being the Crawling King Snakes. It was here that he met a drummer named John Bonham. The two connected instantly, sharing the same passion for music. They later formed the Band of Joy, blending the raw sounds of blues with the psychedelic trends of the time. This was the beginning of something incredible. Something that would change the course of music history forever. You know, the most interesting thing about Robert's music There was a particular style of music that he always performed with his band. Despite being a rock band, they adapted that style, and it made them so unique. What influenced Plant's music style? Robert Plant has always loved Indian music and culture, and this love also spread to North Africa, and one of his favorite singers is Mohammed Rafi, who reminds him of a time when he was close friends with the family that lived next to his wife Maureen's parents. He would visit them often without planning, just to enjoy their food and music. Those visits meant a lot to him. So in 1972, Robert and his bandmate, Jimmy Page, traveled to Bombay, now called Mumbai, to record music with famous musicians, Ustad Sultan Khan and Pete Vijay Raga Rao. At that moment, it was just the start of their love for exploring music from different parts of the world. Later in 1994, Robert and Jimmy came together again for a project called No, Quarter this time. It wasn't with the whole band Led Zeppelin, because John Paul Jones wasn't with them. They filmed part of it in Morocco, where they played music in the old city square of Marrakesh with local musicians. If you're a good fan of their song, you could hear a lot of North African music in their songs, and one of the highlights was a special version of their famous song Kashmir, which had an Indian sound. Robert Plant's love for music from other parts of the world didn't stop there in his solo albums like Mighty Rearranger and Carry Fire. You can hear many Arabic and Eastern music. Influences Robert mixed these sounds with rock music, creating something unique and beautiful that people loved. But while the world enjoyed his music, little did they know that he had some heartbreaking stories behind those glamorous stage appearances. And this is one of the reasons his daughter decided to let the world know what her father went through to make everyone happy, the tough battle with vocal challenge and surgeries. In the early 1970s, Robert Plant, the lead singer of Led Zeppelin, started having some big problems with his voice. He had been singing loudly and often, night after night, for years. Plus, like many rock stars at the time, he was smoking and drinking, which wasn't helping his voice at all over time. This caught up with him, and his throat began to hurt. His voice wasn't as strong as it used to be, and he found it harder to sing the way he wanted. One day, Robert went to see the doctor, and the news wasn't good. The doctor told him that his vocal cords were damaged, and if he didn't get treatment, he could lose his voice forever. Imagine how scary that must have been for him, because singing was everything to Robert, and the idea that he might never sing again was heartbreaking. So Robert had to have surgery to fix his voice. The doctors found little growths on his vocal cords called nodules, and they carefully removed them. These nodules are kind of like little bumps that can form if you use your voice too much without giving it a break. After the surgery, Robert had to rest. He couldn't sing. He couldn't talk much, and he needed time to heal. This was probably one of the hardest things for him, because he loved performing so much. When Robert finally started singing again, his voice wasn't exactly the same. It was a bit rougher, and didn't hit the high notes as easily as before. But Robert didn't give up. He adjusted his singing style to fit his new voice. Even though it wasn't the same as before, he still found a way to make it work, and continued to make amazing music with Led Zeppelin. This tough time in Robert's life showed just how much he cared about his music. He didn't let something like a damaged voice stop him from doing what he loved. Instead, he learned to take better care of himself and his voice. And he showed the world that even when things get tough, you can find a way to keep going. Robert was glad that he withstood this tough moment in his life. But little did he know that something tougher was soon coming his way. The car accident that changed his life. It was as if the whole 1970s came with a full package. life of challenges for Plant and his wife, who were involved in a car accident. And it took a long time for them to fully recover from the accident, because Plant suffered a broken ankle and elbow, and it would take nearly 2 years before he was completely healed. During this time, he had to rely on a wheelchair, which made things even more difficult. This unfortunate incident disrupted Led Zeppelin's future plans. In a major way, they had to cancel their remaining tour dates, including those in North America, which was a big disappointment to fans. The accident also slowed down their progress on a new album they had just released, Physical Graffiti, and they were supposed to continue promoting it. But with Plant unable to perform everything, came to a standstill. Work on their next album, Presence, was also delayed. It eventually came out the following year. But the band had already lost precious time for Plant. The accident was a huge setback, but nothing could prepare him for what would happen next. Just 2 years later, an unimaginable tragedy struck his 5-year-old son, Karak, suddenly passed away due to a stomach infection while the band was on tour in the United States. The news completely shattered him. Losing a child is every parent's worst nightmare, and for Plant it was almost too much to bear. He immediately withdrew from the public eye, choosing to grieve privately with his family. The pain was so intense that he even considered leaving Led Zeppelin for good for a while. It seemed like the band might never return, but in 1978 they finally came together again to work on what would become their last album. In Through the Outdoor, this record was deeply personal for Plant, as it included a song dedicated to his late son titled All My Love. By this point, everything he had been through had changed him. The car crash had been the beginning of a series of painful events, and they had all taken a toll on him, both emotionally and physically. The accident itself had been terrifying. It happened on August 4th, 1975, when Plant was in the passenger seat, while his wife, Maureen, was driving the car, suddenly lost control, swerving off the road before crashing into a tree. The impact was brutal. Plant suffered multiple fractures, shattering his right leg, and also breaking his right ankle and elbow. His wife and the other passengers were also seriously hurt. When doctors examined him, they told him it would take at least 6 months before he could walk without help, despite the pain. Plant didn't give up on music. In an interview, his bandmate, Jimmy Page, described how determined they were to keep moving forward, saying that their music had a powerful energy and urgency. Plant himself later admitted that he didn't feel like he had a choice. He was trapped in a storm of difficulties, but instead of letting it consume him, he put all his emotions into making music. All the frustration and passion that had been building up inside him came out when they started writing again. And when they finally stepped into the studio, the result was something extraordinary. Their album carried the same signature power that fans loved. It was unmistakably Led Zeppelin, apart from his car. Accident Plant also had experiences that broke his heart together with his bandmates, and one amongst those moments was when he lost his son. We have already mentioned it, but now let's explain what really happened within those depressing periods and why it even affected the band. Losing a child at the beginning of their career. Led Zeppelin seemed to have everything going their way. Fans adored them. Their album sold in huge numbers, and they quickly became one of the biggest rock bands in the world, even though critics often gave them bad reviews. But by the mid-1970s, it felt like their luck had completely changed. Instead of moving forward with their success, they kept running into one problem after another. The worst moment came on July 26th, 1977, when Robert Plant's 5-year-old son, Karak, suddenly passed away due to a stomach illness. This heartbreaking loss nearly led to the end of Led Zeppelin. When this happened, the band had been on a massive US tour at the time, a tour that was supposed to be a great moment for them, but tragedy struck and everything fell apart. It wasn't the first time Plant had faced a life-changing crisis. Just 2 years earlier, he and his wife had been in a terrible car accident while they were visiting Rhodes, a Greek island. The crash had left Plant seriously injured, forcing the band to take a long break so he could recover. While that time off helped him, physically, it didn't stop a series of unfortunate events from ruining their next attempt at touring when they finally returned to the road. Things started going wrong almost immediately. Plant got sick with laryngitis, forcing them to delay the start of their tour from February to April. This caused a chain reaction of problems, since they had already sent all their instruments and stage equipment overseas in preparation for the tour. They had no way to rehearse while waiting for Plant to get better. So guitarist Jimmy Page later admitted that he was scared before the first few shows, because he hadn't played his guitar for an entire month. Once the tour actually began, the troubles kept piling up. Their concert in Cincinnati in April turned chaotic when a group of fans without tickets tried to force their way into the venue, leading to violent clashes. Then in June, they were scheduled to perform in Tampa, but heavy rain forced them to stop early, causing some angry fans to start a riot. Things took an even darker turn in July, when the band played in Oakland after their show on the 23rd. Their manager Peter Grant, along with drummer John Bonham and a few others, got into a brutal fight with an employee working for concert promoter Bill Graham. From the very beginning of that tour, there had been an unusual tension in the air. People close to the band later said that the entire atmosphere felt negative, much darker than any of their previous tours. Even with everything that was happening, they still had their incredible moments on stage, but some performances felt forced, as if they were just pushing through, instead of truly enjoying the music. Even worse, some of the people surrounding the band had become more dangerous, and it seemed like trouble followed them wherever they went. After leaving Oakland, the band members traveled separately to their next tour stop, which was New Orleans. That's where Plant received the phone call that really changed his life forever. At first, the news wasn't too alarming, because he was simply told that his son was sick. But before he even had time to react, a second call came in, and this time the message was devastating, which was that Karak had passed away. Just hearing that over the phone, Plant felt so disorganized because he was thousands of miles away and unable to be by his son's side. In his final moments for Plant, Karak was everything his father later shared. That Plant and his son had an unbreakable bond, and losing him was unimaginable. The tour was immediately cancelled, even though it had been scheduled to continue for another month. Plant rushed home, where he found comfort in his wife, Maureen, and their daughter Carmen. As for the rest of the band, they put everything on hold, knowing their friend needed time to grieve. Jimmy Page later explained that they were more than just bandmates. They were more like family, and they had to give Plant the space he needed. Despite everything, Plant didn't completely shut out his bandmates. He later shared that John Bonham had been a huge source of support during that dark time. But what made things worse was how the media handled the tragedy. Turning it into a public spectacle, Plant was overwhelmed, trying to protect his family while also dealing with his own grief. At one point, he even considered leaving the music world entirely. He thought about walking away from it all and starting over. He even went as far as applying for a job at a training college in Sussex, hoping to escape the pain and find peace in a completely different life. You might be wondering if he really took that decision. considering how far he had gone in music. Yes, he did. And did it work out for him? Keep watching to find out. The effects of his son's death on him, after losing his young son, Robert Plant, started to question everything about his life, including his career and music. The fast-paced lifestyle of a rock star, filled with fame and chaos, no longer seemed appealing to him. He found himself thinking about a completely different path, one that had nothing to do with the stage. The flashing lights or the roaring crowds, looking back on that difficult time Plant shared that his family had always been drawn to, a certain type of education known as the Rudolf Steiner-Waldorf system. This approach to learning was popular in the West Midlands, where he lived, and he admired the way it nurtured young minds. After his son's passing, he saw something genuine and pure in that world, something that felt far more meaningful than the roller coaster of fame. He believed that stepping away from the spotlight and leaving his ego behind might help him heal deep down. He understood that most entertainers no matter how confident they seem on stage, are often insecure and searching for something to fill a void in their lives. Perhaps he thought music had been his way of doing just that. Although he never actually went through with the career change, the idea of becoming a teacher stayed with him over the years. Even later in life, he admitted that the thought still crossed his mind. From time to time, he had a close friend, Alison Krauss, whose son attended a Waldorf school in Tennessee. Whenever he went with her to pick the child up, he found himself drawn to the simple joy of that environment, the sounds of happy children laughing, and the familiar scent of the classrooms brought back feelings that he couldn't quite ignore. If he had become a teacher, Plant knew exactly how he would have approached it. He imagined himself standing in front of young students, not just teaching them facts, but filling their minds with incredible stories. Having 5 grandchildren of his own, he had already seen how much they enjoyed listening to his tales. He believed that storytelling had a magical way of capturing young hearts and minds, making learning feel like an adventure rather than just a task. The moment his son passed away, Plant found himself at a crossroads. He wasn't the only one in the band questioning their future Led Zeppelin had already been through so much, and there was a sense that the dream they had built together was beginning to fade with his own personal tragedy weighing on him. Plant felt an even stronger urge to step away. The pain of losing his child made him rethink everything. He didn't just consider quitting. He actually took steps toward making it happen. He applied to a training college to become a teacher, fully intending to leave the world of music behind. However, just as he was preparing to walk away for good, someone close to him stepped in. John Bonham, the band's drummer and one of Plant's closest friends, convinced him to think twice. Bonham saw something in Plant that Plant himself couldn't see. At the time, he knew his friend had a gift, something rare and powerful, and that leaving music might not be the answer he was looking for. And so, with Bonham's encouragement, Plant stayed, even though his heart was heavy with loss. He chose to continue the journey. He had started with Led Zeppelin after everything. Plant didn't become a teacher, but that period of his life changed him forever. He never looked at music the same way again. It was no longer just about fame or success. It became something deeper, something that connected him to his son in ways that words could never fully explain. However, while Plant was still trying to heal from his son's death, another tragedy struck the band that deeply affected all of them. Led Zeppelin's disbandment after Bonham's death on September 24th, 1980. Led Zeppelin's assistant Rex King picked up drummer John Bonham to go to a rehearsal for the band's upcoming tour, which was supposed to start in October. It would have been their first tour since 1977. During the drive, Bonham asked to stop for breakfast and drank a lot of hot drinks. About 16 shots of it. The appalling part was that he didn't stop there. He kept drinking. Even during the rehearsal afterward. The band went to Jimmy Page's house in Windsor. Late at night, Bonham fell asleep. Someone helped him get to bed and made sure he was lying on his side the next day. The band's manager and another member found Bonham unresponsive. Sadly, he was pronounced dead at the age of 32. An investigation showed that Bonham had drunk a lot in just one day. As a result, it made him sick, and he choked while sleeping, which caused his death. The report also said there were no other substances in his body. Before his death, Bonham had stopped using substances, but was just taking medicine for anxiety and depression to honor him. His ashes were cremated and buried in a church graveyard, Worcestershire, on October 12, 1980. After his death, Led Zeppelin decided not to replace him. They made a statement saying they couldn't continue without their close friend. They said that the respect they had for Bonham and his family, along with their deep bond as a band, made it clear they couldn't go on without him, and the final decision was just to disband, making them go separate ways. Reunion and final split. In 1985, something incredible happened. A big concert called Live Aid was held to raise money for people suffering from hunger in Africa. This concert had many famous musicians from all over the world, all coming together to help a good cause. One of the most exciting moments for fans was when Led Zeppelin, one of the greatest rock bands, reunited for the first time in years. And because of this, fans were so excited to see them back on stage. But sadly, things didn't go as well as expected. Phil Collins, the famous drummer from the band Genesis, was asked to play drums for Led Zeppelin. During their performance, this was because the band's original drummer, John Bonham, had passed away. The problem for Collins was that he had already played a show earlier that day in London. With his own band, he had to fly to Philadelphia for Led Zeppelin's performance. Because of this, there wasn't enough time for him to rehearse with the band. Before going on stage, the performance didn't sound as tight and perfect as fans had hoped after the performance. Some of Led Zeppelin's members, especially the guitarist Jimmy Page, were very upset. Page is known for being a perfectionist, and he was really disappointed with how it went. It was so far from what the band usually did that they decided not to include it in any of their official releases. Like live DVDs, they didn't want to remember it. The performance was affected by many technical problems, and it just wasn't the best, even though the performance didn't go as planned. Robert Plant, the lead singer of Led Zeppelin, and Phil Collins stayed friends after Led Zeppelin split up. Finally, Plant started working on his solo music career. Phil Collins was there to support him during this new chapter in his life. Plant appreciated all the help and advice Collins gave him. He has often said that Collins was a big help, especially when Plant was adjusting to life without John Bonham. Phil Collins was a very energetic and encouraging friend. He pushed Robert Plant to try new things with his music and to keep going even when it felt hard.